Uppsala in Sweden is Greg Simons. He is a researcher at the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies. He's also an associate professor at Uppsala University. Greg, good to have you on the show. We all know that propaganda is a critical part of modern day warfare. I mean, besides justifying military action, we know that it can be used to motivate citizens. Talk to us about how this is sort of an X factor in today's reality.
Well, it's always been the case. It depends. Sometimes it's more subtle. It should be subtle because if it's not, it might not be accepted. If we go back, the masters of propaganda were not the totalitarian states like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union. In fact, there is a tendency for democracy or democratic states to be more adept at propaganda. For example, the British propaganda of World War I was held as an example by Nazi Germany. But if we go through what propaganda is, it's using the information realm to influence the cognitive realm. That is how people perceive the reality to be. So in this case, it's creating representations of the real world, and that influences how people think about it and how they react to it.
Since you mentioned authoritarian states, I'm interested not only with Russia, but other countries, how they're increasingly using online platforms to disseminate their own narratives.
It's used for different purposes, different reasons. It depends, because propaganda in itself is not a standalone tool. It's to fulfill some kind of political agenda, some part of a bigger program. So you have the program of the government or the program of a certain organization, which is being realized or assisted through the use of information. Now, I mean, if we look at the Ukraine war, for example, you got propaganda used by all sides. Russia tends to use propaganda as a means to legitimize its military action. So therefore, the propaganda is playing a subordinate role to the military operations because it's trying to allow them to be more readily accepted. However, if we look at Ukraine, it's the other way around because you've got an asymmetry in military power. So Ukraine tends to use propaganda as a force multiplier, if you like. That is, because they lack the hard power, they try to use information power to influence the battlefield. And this not only includes the physical battlefield, but the battlefield for hearts and minds. So therefore, military operations play a subordinate role to the propaganda because what they're trying to do is increase the perception of their own strength and decrease Russia's ability to use hard power in Ukraine. But you've also got other states like ISIS, Islamic State, was very adept at propaganda because their propaganda, it tended to fulfill these kind of expectations in audiences. For example, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, their propaganda was not aimed at only instilling fear, but also providing hope for potential recruits in order to fulfill their higher order needs, a place or a sense of belonging, purpose, and these other things. So there are all kinds of uses for propaganda and these information operations.
Greg Simons, thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World. I do appreciate your time and enjoyed listening to your analysis on history.